Imagine this for a moment. Johnny Depp, one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, the man who gave us some of the most unforgettable and eccentric characters on screen, suddenly opens up and says something that no one expected. He doesn't talk about fame. He doesn't brag about money. He doesn't even mention his career. Instead, he says something so simple, so raw, that it leaves you thinking about it long after. He says, "I just want to be a husband." Now pause right there. Think about who we're talking about. This is Johnny Depp, a man who has lived a life filled with bright lights, endless cameras, controversies that shook the entertainment industry, and roles that became part of pop culture forever. And yet, when given the chance to confess what he really wants, he doesn't ask for another blockbuster movie or more fame or another wild adventure. He strips it all down to something that honestly feels so ordinary and yet so human. He just wants to be a husband. That's powerful. And that's what makes this confession so interesting. Because it makes you realize that no matter how big a celebrity is, no matter how out of reach their lives seem, deep down, they want the same things we all do: stability, connection, love. And let's be honest, Johnny Depp's journey to that simple confession has been anything but simple. If you followed his life even just a little, you know what I mean. His story has been a roller coaster. From his early rise to fame back in the 80s and 90s, to becoming a household name thanks to characters like Captain Jack Sparrow, to the chaotic years of legal battles, tabloid headlines, and broken relationships, he's lived a life that has always been under a microscope. People have seen him as a genius actor, a troubled artist, a misunderstood soul, and at times even as a villain in the public eye. But here's the thing. Behind all of that noise, behind the flashing lights of Hollywood, the chaos of courtrooms and the whispers of rumors, there's a man who just wants something that sounds so ordinary. He just wants to be a husband. And when you think about it, it's almost ironic. The man who could have anything in the world longs for something so simple that many people take for granted. Now, when people first heard him say this, reactions were all over the place. Some thought he was joking. Others thought it was some kind of sarcasm. After all, Johnny has always been known for his offbeat humor and unpredictable way of saying things. But as it turns out, he wasn't joking. He meant it. And the honesty in that confession is what really struck a chord, because here's the truth. When someone like Johnny Depp admits that what he really wants isn't another movie or another award or more attention, but instead something steady, something grounded, it forces us to look at him differently. It strips away the Hollywood persona and shows us the human side. The part of him that's not playing a role, not putting on a performance, but just being real. And isn't that something we all can relate to? Think about your own life for a second. How many times have you chased after something shiny? Maybe it was a new phone, maybe a promotion, maybe more recognition from people around you. And then, once you had it, it didn't quite fill the gap you thought it would. Because deep down, what most of us really crave is love, trust, companionship, a sense of belonging. That's why Johnny's confession hits so hard. It's not just about him. It's about us, too. Of course, with a confession like this, there were bound to be misconceptions. Some people assumed that Johnny was saying he wanted to get married right away. Others thought it was some kind of hidden message aimed at his past relationships. But that's not what it was about. It wasn't a rush to walk down the aisle again. It wasn't throwing shade at anyone. It was something deeper. It was a longing for stability, for a sense of home, for something that isn't built on cameras, headlines, or public opinion, but on real connection. And that's where things get really interesting. Because if you followed Johnny Depp's private life even just a little, you'll know he's always had this quieter side to him. Sure, he played the part of a rock star, living the wild, unpredictable lifestyle, but behind closed doors, people close to him often say he's happiest when he's surrounded by family. He's not the type who constantly needs the spotlight. He's not the kind of guy who thrives only on being in the center of attention. Instead, he's someone who values the simple moments, the kind you don't see splashed across headlines. Becoming a father, for example, completely changed the way he viewed life. He's spoken about this in interviews before. Once he had kids, fame and money stopped being the main focus. It wasn't just about the next big role anymore. It became about creating a safe world for his children, a place where they could grow up away from the madness of Hollywood. And when you keep that in mind, his confession about wanting to be a husband makes even more sense. It's not just about romance. It's about creating a foundation, building a safe, stable space where love and trust come first. Now, if you look at celebrity culture more broadly, you'll see that this kind of shift isn't unique to Johnny Depp. In fact, it's almost like a pattern. Many stars, after years of chaos, fame, and non-stop attention, eventually reach a point where what they want most is not another award, not another red carpet event, not another blockbuster role, but just normalcy. They start to crave a life that isn't constantly under a microscope. They want to stop living as a headline and start living as a human being again. And Johnny's confession when he said, "I just want to be a husband," is a textbook example of that moment when the shine of fame wears off and the deeper truths begin to reveal themselves. Think about it. When we look at celebrities from the outside, it's easy to assume they have everything. Fame, wealth, adoring fans, glamorous lifestyles, it looks like the ultimate dream. People chase after fame because they imagine it's the peak of happiness. But what often gets lost in the spotlight is the toll it takes on the human spirit. Fame is like a magnifying glass. It doesn't just make your accomplishments bigger. It also makes your mistakes louder, your struggles heavier, and your private life almost impossible to protect. And for a lot of stars, the longer they live in that world, the more they start to realize that the things they once thought would fulfill them don't actually give them peace. Sure, the first few years of fame might feel thrilling, the lights, the applause, the attention, but over time, it starts to weigh on you. Suddenly, every step you take is documented. Every word you say is scrutinized, and every relationship you have is analyzed by millions of strangers who don't really know you. Imagine that pressure. Imagine waking up every day knowing that no matter what you do, someone is going to have an opinion about it. At first, maybe you can laugh it off, but year after year, it chips away at you. That's why so many celebrities, after living through that non-stop chaos, eventually come to crave something entirely different. They want simplicity. They want privacy. They want love that isn't tainted by headlines or speculation. They want to go out for coffee without cameras following them. They want to be able to sit with someone they love, talk, laugh, and just be themselves without worrying about who's watching. Johnny's confession fits perfectly into that pattern. After everything he's been through, the highs of success, the lows of very public struggles, he reaches a point where what he wants isn't another climb to the top, but a return to something grounded. When he says, "I just want to be a husband," it's not just about wanting a romantic title. It's about yearning for normalcy, for connection, for stability. It's about wanting to live life not as Johnny Depp, the global superstar, but as Johnny, the human being. If you look at history, you'll see plenty of similar examples. Take someone like Michael Jackson. For all his fame and success, in countless interviews he would talk about how all he really wanted was to have a simple childhood that he never got. He longed for normal experiences like going to the park, playing with friends, or just being able to live without cameras following his every move. Or look at someone like Princess Diana. She was one of the most photographed women in the world, yet she constantly spoke about wanting to just live a quiet, meaningful life. To use her influence to do good rather than be trapped in endless scandals and public scrutiny. Even modern stars go through this. Think of Justin Bieber. At one point, he was the center of the music world, adored and criticized at the same time. He spiraled under the pressure of fame, but eventually he reached a stage where he openly admitted that what he wanted most was stability, faith, and a loving marriage. He even talked about how being with Hailey Baldwin gave him the sense of grounding that fame could never provide. And that confession mirrors Johnny Depp's in so many ways. Because here's the thing, fame magnifies, but it doesn't fulfill. It can give you the loudest applause, but it can't give you the quiet comfort of being truly known and loved by one person. It can buy you mansions, but it can't buy you peace of mind. And sooner or later, even the brightest stars realize that. They realize that the cameras eventually stop flashing, the awards gather dust, and the headlines move on. What's left when all of that fades is whether you have love, trust, and stability in your personal life. And that's why Johnny's confession is so powerful. It isn't just a throwaway line. It's the crystallization of decades of experience. He's lived the wild ride. He's seen the rise, the fall, the chaos, and the noise. And after all of it, when he could have asked for anything, he asked for something most people would consider ordinary. But isn't that the beauty of it? That a man who has lived such an extraordinary life longs for something so beautifully simple? It also challenges the way we see celebrities. Often, we put them on pedestals. We look at them as untouchable, as people who don't struggle with the same things we do. But Johnny's words remind us that they're human, too. They want the same things. They need the same things. And sometimes, the louder the chaos of fame gets, the more they crave the quiet moments of normal life. Now, let's dig a little deeper. Why does this shift happen? Why do so many stars go from craving attention to craving normalcy? Psychologists who study celebrity culture often point out that fame is addictive. At first, the attention feels like validation. Every cheer, every headline, every fan encounter gives you a rush. But like any addiction, the high doesn't last. You need more and more of it to feel satisfied, and eventually it stops feeling good altogether. Instead, it leaves you feeling empty, like you're constantly performing but never truly living. For Johnny, who has spent decades in the spotlight, that emptiness must have become crystal clear. And so his confession isn't just about longing for love. It's about breaking free from the cycle of always performing, always entertaining, always being Johnny Depp the star, rather than Johnny Depp the man. And maybe that's what makes this confession resonate so much with fans. Because deep down we all understand that feeling. Maybe not at the scale of global fame, but in our own ways. Think about social media. How often do we perform versions of ourselves for others to see? How often do we chase likes, shares, or approval? And yet, at the end of the day, what really matters isn't how many people watched our story or liked our post. What matters is whether we have someone who knows us beyond the filter, beyond the performance, and loves us anyway. Johnny's confession, in a way, mirrors that universal human experience. And when he says he just wants to be a husband, he's really saying he wants something real. Something unfiltered. Something that doesn't need to be put on display for the world to consume. He's saying he wants the kind of love that's not about headlines, but about home. The shine of fame eventually wears off. And when it does, what remains is the human truth. That's why Johnny's confession isn't just a story about a celebrity. It's a mirror for all of us. It's a reminder that no matter what we chase, no matter how big our dreams, at the core, the things that bring us peace are often the simplest. Love, stability, connection, and the safety of being truly seen. And there's another layer to this too. Because when Johnny made this confession, it wasn't just about expressing a desire for marriage or companionship. It was about vulnerability. Think about it. For someone who has been portrayed as mysterious, eccentric, and sometimes even guarded, opening up in such a direct and personal way is a huge step. Vulnerability doesn't come easy, especially when you've been under the public microscope for decades. But the fact that he chose to be that open, that says something. It says he's not afraid to let people see who he really is, even if it surprises them. Now here's something you might not know. Insiders say there are more interviews and documentaries in the works where Johnny might reveal even more about his private life. And if this confession is any indication, we're going to see a side of him that's even more real, more raw, and more personal than ever before. For fans who have followed him through every twist and turn, that's something to look forward to. But let's bring it back to us for a second. Why does this confession matter? Why should we care that Johnny Depp, of all people, just wants to be a husband? It matters because it's a reminder that no matter how different someone's life may look on the outside, at the core, we're all after the same things. We all want love. We all want stability. We all want to belong. And when someone as larger than life as Johnny admits that, it creates a bridge between him and us. It makes him human in a way that no movie role ever could. So the next time you see a headline about Johnny Depp, or any celebrity really, remember this moment. Remember that behind all the glitz and drama, there's a human being who's searching for something that's not that different from what you're searching for. And that leads us to the big question. What do you think about Johnny Depp's confession? Does it surprise you that a man who has lived such a wild, unpredictable life would just want something so simple? Or does it make perfect sense when you think about everything he's been through? Whatever your take is, it's worth thinking about. Because sometimes the simplest words, like, I just want to be a husband, carry the deepest truths. And if you're as fascinated by this side of Johnny as I am, there's more to explore. There are other moments, other interviews where he's revealed pieces of himself that you might not expect. If you've only ever seen him as Captain Jack Sparrow, or as Edward Scissorhands, or as the eccentric roles he's famous for, then diving into these personal confessions is like opening a whole new chapter. So let's keep this conversation going. Think about what his words mean to you. Think about what they reveal about him. And maybe, just maybe, think about how they reflect your own journey too. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a Hollywood star or just someone trying to figure life out, the search for love and stability is something we all share. And if you want to keep exploring stories like this, where the spotlight fades and the human truth shines through, make sure to stick around. Because this is just the beginning.